have you ever tried to walk down a dark staircase with your eyes completely closed? It's completely pitch black and you can't see anything. Chances are it didn't go so well, right? You either crash and burn, quite literally, or you just can't get to where you need to go. For many teens and young adults struggling with suicide and depression, this is what life feels like. There are many reasons that the rate of suicide and depression has been increasing in the United States. The first reason is COVID-19. And even though COVID-19 is dwindling down, I'm going to show you that the numbers are not going down with it. The second reason is the increasing use of social media in the United States. This increase in depression caused by COVID-19 and social media is causing a subsequent increase in suicide. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, in 2010, 1 in 5 adults were struggling with clinical depression. Today, it has been found that 1 in 3 adults are struggling with clinical depression. And for those struggling with depression, symptoms may include hostility, irritability, feelings of hopelessness, empty mood, which basically means you're just not caring about a lot of things, decreased energy, slower movements and talking, or even difficulty sleeping or concentrating. In 2011, when Snapchat was released, the suicide rate was 12.5%. 8 years later, in 2019, it was found that the suicide rate had increased by 1.7% to 14.2%. And scientists are hypothesizing that it is going to continue to increase. If we can shine a light on suicide and depression, we can show those that are struggling that they are worthy of being helped and that they are of no less value than anybody else. Now, the first and most apparent reason for the increase in suicide and depression is COVID-19. Now, we all know that extended quarantine did not have a positive effect on anybody's mental health. In 2020, there were 1.2 million suicide attempts. 46.5 thousand of those were successful, according to Boston University. At the beginning of lockdown, the suicide rate was 8.5%. 2 months later, it had nearly tripled to 27.8%. It was also found by Boston University that those who were struggling with money were 7.2 times more likely to struggle with suicide and depression. If you were experiencing 4 or more stressors in your life, you were 4 times more likely to experience long-term mental health struggles with suicide and depression during lockdown. Now, keep in mind, a stressor can include anything. It can be financial issues, marriage/relationship problems, young dependent children like an infant or a toddler, and any pre-existing medical conditions that you may have had prior to COVID. It was found by the AFSP that white middle-aged men made up 69.68% of all suicides in 2020. Scientists believe that it was due to the stress of trying to provide for a family during the extended quarantine. Now, some of you may be thinking that now that COVID-19 is dwindling down, so will the depression and suicide rates. On the contrary, it was found by Boston University that at the end of 2021, the depression rate had jumped once again by 5%, bringing the number from 27.8% to 32.8%. Scientists are hypothesizing that this is due to the stress of trying to adjust back to normal routines. Now, I know we all remember what our routines looked like during COVID. It was mostly sitting on the couch, doing nothing. Most people didn't actually do their work, and pretty much just being a really lazy person. And trying to adjust back to the normal routine of waking up early, going to school, doing your work for multiple hours a day is creating another mental health struggle. Okay, so while COVID has had a negative effect on depression and suicide rates over the last 2 years, social media has had a negative impact on its users for over a decade. And the negative effect of social media is continuing to increase as social media becomes more and more used and more popular. Now, I'm not saying that all social media is bad, but according to a study done at Banyan Mental Health, it was found that those who constantly are posting on social media and are seeking after likes, comments, and follows were much more likely to struggle with suicide and depression. Now, the science behind social media is very simple. The rush you receive when you get a like, a comment, a follow, a tag, or whatever it may be, is created by a chemical in your brain called dopamine. Now, according to WebMD, dopamine can actually be very beneficial for you in healthy amounts. But constantly posting on social media can actually start to build up an intolerance of dopamine in your brain, which is called anhedonia. And according to WebMD, if you have anhedonia, you could experience loss of motivation, loss of sleep, your attention span will begin to decrease, and you may even struggle with social relationships and declining moods. Another problem with social media is the algorithm. Now, let's say you're scrolling through Instagram and you see a post about your favorite TV show. Chances are you're going to like that post, right? Because it's about your favorite TV show. Well, then let's say the algorithm brings up another one, and another one, and another one. Well, unfortunately, that was the case for Molly Haugen. According to Washington Post, the day started out as normal. But before she went to bed, she decided she was going to scroll on Instagram for a little while. She came across a post about suicide, and she decided to like it, make a small comment, and then she moved on. The problem was that the algorithm gave her another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And soon she was dragged down into an inescapable rabbit hole. Unfortunately, that night, Molly decided to end her life. Now, even if you're not like Molly Haugen, even constantly being on social media leaves you at a much higher risk for cyberbullying. 20% of all high school students have been admitted to being cyberbullied at one point in their life. So while I'm not saying that social media is all bad, limiting your social media time can actually be very beneficial for you. Because it was found by Banning Mental Health that those who are constantly on social media were 71% more likely to struggle with mental health in their lifetime. For these young teen girls struggling with low self-esteem because of social media influencers or anything that they might have seen online, they are more likely to end their lives because they feel as though it is unworthy. Which leads me to my third point, which is that the increase of depression caused by COVID-19 and social media is causing an epidemic of suicides in the United States. According to Very Well Mind, the suicide rate increased 33% from 1999 to 2017. This increase is obviously due to the increase of social media and COVID-19. In 2021 alone, there were 800,000 suicides. That means that there was one every 40 seconds, and 60% of all of those people who decided to kill themselves that year were diagnosed with depression prior to ending their lives. Now, I'm not saying that everyone with depression will end up killing themselves, but of the 800,000 who decided to end their lives that year, 480,000 of them were diagnosed with depression. Now, I know this problem might look pretty bleak, and it might not seem as though there's a solution. The good news is that there is. According to psychiatry.org, 50% of all students with mental illness admitted to being too afraid to ask for help. And 90% of those who chose to ask for help turned to Google because they were so desperate. Most often, those who decide to seek help are rejected by their closest people, like their family and their friends. This is because depression and suicide have a certain stigma around them that causes there to be a certain avoidance of the issue, which makes it extremely hard for those who are struggling to seek and find help. Now, those who struggle to seek and find help can actually experience feelings of hopelessness. They can experience increased symptoms of depression and anxiety. It can cause tension in school and work, and it can cause problems with social relationships. By shining a light on suicide and depression, we can show those that are struggling that they are of no less value than anybody else and that they are worthy of being helped. The first reason for the increase was COVID-19, and I showed you guys that even though COVID-19 is dwindling down, the suicide rate and depression rates are actually continuing to increase. The second reason is the increasing use of social media, and as it becomes more and more popular, the issue becomes more and more pressing. This increase in depression caused by COVID-19 and social media is causing a subsequent increase in suicide. There's this quote that I like. It says, "It isn't weak to ask for help. It's like using a flashlight when you're lost in the dark." As human beings, it is our job, our personal responsibility, to be that light for others. And although it may be a small sacrifice for us to help those in need, that 2 seconds it might take to comfort somebody will change their whole world. And for those 90% who chose to turn to Google, we can make all the difference in the world.